Hello YouTube! Today I've got a special guest with me, Candice from the blog Paris is Just Not That Into You.
Salut!
This is going to be a double video for you because firstly we're going to tackle a really interesting topic, which is why it's so hard to make friends with Parisians. And the reason I actually got Candice in is because she has an awesome article about this which I found on her blog, and I was like, we have to bring that to life in a video. But the second bonus is that you get to play a game, which is, can you tell the difference between the Australian and the New Zealand accent? So I'm curious about this name, Paris is Just Not That Into You. What does it mean?
Yeah, so I mean, Paris is Just Not That Into You is a blog that I set up to talk about my expat experience in Paris. And when I arrived in Paris, I found that, you know, there's a lot of blogs talking about how beautiful Paris is, like how amazing the Eiffel Tower is, etc. And, you know, I find that Paris is all of that, but it's also a really random place.
Yeah, it's not always picture perfect.
And so I guess I created the blog to kind of tackle those topics and to sort of explain why it is that I decide to stay in Paris, despite the fact that it would appear that Paris is just not that into me. I'm also active on Instagram and recently on Twitter as well. I've also got a podcast of the same name, Paris is Just Not That Into You, on iTunes.
Cool. So we'll link all of those down below in the description box so you can go and find out why Paris seems to just not be completely into her. So without further ado, let's get stuck into the reasons why we think it's so hard to make friends with Parisians.
So the first reason why I think that it's a little bit difficult to make friends with Parisians is that they do not like to make friends with people at work. In my first job in Paris, my very first week, I sat down to lunch with my colleagues and they said to me, so I hear that where you come from, people actually make friends with their colleagues. And I was like, yeah. I mean...
It's a great source to meet people, like...
Exactly, I figured that that was kind of normal. Apparently not. So then she turns around and says to me, well, just so that you know, we don't do that here. So, and I mean,
At least she warned you, I guess.
Exactly, that's the thing. So, I mean, what I originally thought was maybe a little bit direct, especially for my first week at work, actually turned out to be pretty solid advice because it was true. I find that people in Paris, they really like to keep their working life and their private life separate.
I've heard some French people explain it to me as, you know, when we go to work, we don't want to be thinking about home, and when we go home, we don't want to be thinking about work, which is why they try and keep the two worlds super separate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's so nice to be able to make friends at work through your colleagues and stuff.
I mean, I don't know about you, but the way that I figure, if you're going to be like spending at least 35 hours a week
35
Vive la France. I mean, you may as well get along with these guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought that when I started working, I'd definitely be able to make a lot more friends and kind of expand my group, because the friends I had here were from university, which is cool. Love my friends from university. But they were also like international characters, like they came and did this international program, so a lot of them left. And I was like, it doesn't matter, I'll make lots of new friends at work, but no.
No.
So reason number 2 for why we think that it's super difficult to make friends with Parisians is that they actually already have their friends. And I remember, you know, like getting really upset one night with my boyfriend and saying, you know, what's wrong with me? Like, what is it that's making Parisian, especially Parisian, like women, not really warm to me? Like, why don't they like me? And he was like, they just don't need you. You know, it's not about you. They just like, have you ever just thought to yourself, they don't want new friends?
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Who doesn't want new friends?
But I could totally relate to that. I find that, a lot of people here in Paris, they've kind of, you know, they already have their friends from high school or from university, and they just kind of figure, like, I don't actually need any more friends. So they're just kind of not open to making new friends.
Yeah, it's a different rhythm, isn't it? Because for us, I think you can have friends for we say you have a friend for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, you know, and sometimes you have friends and they will be university friends.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you have friends and they'll be work friends while you're at that job. And here I kind of feel like, yeah, they lock their friends in. Like, especially if they go to like prépa, university together, this kind of thing. Friends for life.
Yeah, like you're just kind of stuck with them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and actually when we moved to Paris, because with Niels being from the south of France, he didn't really know anyone here.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's cool, it's an opportunity to meet so many new friends. And the first thing he did is contact people he went to kindergarten with, primary school with, and high school with, and saying, hey, it's been 10, 15, 20 years, but would you be interested in reconnecting?
Like that there needs to be some sort of prior kind of relationship.
Exactly. But I kind of understand, because in Paris we're so busy, the apartments are so small, so you're often like, you know, you're not really inviting people into your intimate space, your home and stuff like that. So when you have new connections, you're always just meeting up in a bar and that kind of thing. So there's a lifestyle factor. And also, I feel like life is so busy here. I don't know why, but time just seems to disappear. So even just managing a network of 5 friends is enough. And because it takes so long to make new friends here, I think even French to French, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even French person to French person, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like when I've made new, or tried to make new friends here, I have to put in so much work. Like, I'm chasing, I'm the one setting up the appointments, I'm the one texting, I'm the one. And sometimes I think, like, the reason I don't have more French friends than I do is because I give up. Because it's just, I don't want to feel like I'm chasing all the time.
Not like in Australia or New Zealand, I'm guessing, where, you know, you just go out with a bunch of people, or you meet like someone at a bar, and then basically like after one night out together you're friends, right? It doesn't work that way here. It's kind of like a, I don't know, at least like a 3-month investment, I guess, before
before you seem like an ROI.
Yes, exactly. like we sort of don't understand the fact that French people aren't interested in making new friends, but I guess they probably don't understand the fact that with us, like, sometimes friendships kind of like they mean a lot while they're happening, but they do sort of come and go, like, by the same token.
So they don't understand why we're not interested in keeping them for life.
Exactly. Like, for them it's like a friend is for life. You are never getting rid of it.
You're never going, like, we're friends for life.
We are locked in.
And then
so another thing that I find is that French people are a little bit less interested in other cultures. And my sort of evidence for that is that before coming to France, I actually lived in Germany for a couple of years. And I found that there, like, German people were really, really interested in Australia. They asked me, like, loads of questions about what life is like in Australia. And I find that in Paris, it's not exactly like that. Like, people...
that people are curious. They're like, oh, how interesting that you're from this place. But... They focus on really rational questions, I find. Like, so the token questions I get are, how long does it take you to get there? What's the land area of the country? What's the population? Like, really factual information. And my favorite one of all, so French, is, but what's your national dish?
Yes, I get that all the time. And they're so disappointed when you have to admit that you don't really have one.
We have really good food. It's super organic and stuff, but we kind of stole the recipes from the rest of the world. It doesn't really go any further than that. So it's like almost like of a factual documentary level. They're interested, but not really. They don't really want to know what our lifestyles are like, what we value, what we find different here, what we've struggled with here. It doesn't, it's true that it doesn't really get to that level. The next point that we wanted to touch on is the fact that when you arrive and you're not a French person, you've got an added layer of difficulty when it comes to integrating, because you don't necessarily speak French, or at least not fluently yet. And we all know that the French language is at the heart and soul of French people, and completely understand. So I understand how they think, oh, we can't possibly be friends if we're not really speaking the same language, etc. But even just on a basic level, it's a big problem. So for example, when you arrive in France and you'll have your French colleagues, or even, contacts, acquaintances, for example, they'll switch to French and they'll start speaking French, and they know that you don't understand yet. And so they basically keep chatting between each other, and their strategy is that they just don't make eye contact with you to avoid having to switch. So they almost like, you're just sitting there like, hey guys, like, and you're in silence, you're just sitting there in silence, and they don't really mind that you're not in the conversation, and they'll just keep chatting between themselves and just not looking at you. Whereas for us, that's such a no-no.
Sometimes I'm not sure if I've come to kind of romanticize what like social interactions are like in Australia, but I really do feel that, yeah, when you're in a group of people, you kind of make an effort to make sure that everyone is included in the conversation. And in France, I feel that it's just like every man for himself in terms of the conversation. And yeah, so people will speak in like really fast French with like loads of slang about like really specific topics that you couldn't really, about like their second cousin or like that party that they went to like 2 years ago. You almost kind of have to like aggressively insert yourself into the conversation.
You do. So another point that I just wanted to mention quickly is that I think as well, we may have just different concepts of what a friendship is. So I was explaining to someone the other day, like a French person, like I find it really hard sometimes because I don't have that French friend who's so close that I could ring them up crying in the middle of the night and say something may just happen, can I come around and see you, kind of thing. And they said to me, like, I would never do that to my friends, like to my girlfriends. And it's like, well, actually, if my measure of what a real friend is like up here, and for French people it's more here, well, maybe I'm being too tough of a judge about how many friends I have. So, and another thing I've noticed about friendships here is that there's definitely something around having a network that you can leverage and use if you need it. So I've had French people contact me like 2 years since we've last spoke, saying, Rosie, my brother's moving to New Zealand. Can you recommend a good insurance provider? And I'm like, what? Like, who are you? Like, we haven't spoken in 2 years. Like, for us, that means, like, the friendship's moved on. Like, you've parted ways. That's fine. Like,
So you didn't read the terms and conditions of that friendship, Rosie.
And it's like, here I feel like you can, like, you contact people all the time to, like, get advice and to like, you leverage your network almost in a business kind of way. So, oh, this person has that information. They could be useful. Oh, this person, I can go to them about that.
So I completely agree. I feel that, Parisians are all over networking. Like, they are really great networkers.
So that's about all that we had to chat about today in this video about why it's so hard to make friends with Parisians. Maybe we've missed something, or maybe like if you guys have any reactions, comments, please leave them down below. Would love to read them and see what you've got to say. Is it the same for you as French people? Does it take a long time to make a real friend? Does it take 1 year or 2 years like it does for us? Or is it just a problem of being an expat? Tell me down below, did you figure out the difference between the Aussie and the New Zealand accent? Or is it impossible? Until the next video, guys, see you next time. A bientôt!
Ciao!